There's been a lot of discussion over the last couple of days on reports that China is building a dam to block a tributary of the river Brahmaputra before it flows into India, possibly as a response to India's decision to review the Indus Waters Treaty with Pakistan. Are these reports true? Is China really planning to block the Brahmaputra? If not, then what is this project really about? We'll be trying to understand all of these questions and many more with the help of our editor, Bharat Bhushan, in this conversation. Bharat, so first of all, to begin with, is this really a project that will block the Brahmaputra?
No. It's a project on a tributary of the Brahmaputra, and people are seeing this in an alarmist context because India has said it will recalibrate its commitment to the Indus Waters Treaty. So that's why people think it's been blocked. Actually, it's a run-of-the-river project with total power capacity of only 42 megawatts. There are two power stations. They'll be built in an area called Shigatse on a tributary, and 42 megawatts is virtually nothing. What run-of-the-river project basically means that you store water, limited amount of water. It's called pondage. So you can have 1 week's pondage or 10 days pondage. It's not like a big dam. So it's a very, very small dam. So you block the river only for, let's say, 7 days if the pondage is of 7 days, or 10 days pondage, or 15 days. After that, the river water flows normally. Nobody can block a river. To put it in context, it's 42 megawatts, and India's dams on Kishan Ganga in the Jhelum River Basin on the Kishan Ganga is 330 megawatts, and Bagliar is 900 megawatts on the Chenab. And both have been ruled by the World Bank Arbitration Panel that these are run-of-the-river projects. So if a 900 megawatt project is run-of-the-river,
It cannot hold a river.
cannot hold a river, then how is a 42 megawatt project going to block the river?
Right.
So it's very foolish of our media and of our strategic experts to say that China is blocking the Brahmaputra because we are threatening Pakistan on the Indus Waters Treaty.
So that's as far as the blocking part is concerned, but will it not also at least affect the flow of the river's water in lower riparian states, India and Bangladesh?
It depends on how many dams China is building. China commissioned a 510 megawatt dam at Zangmu last November. That hasn't affected as yet the flow. We don't know how much it has affected. Then there are two other dams being built next to Zangmu, one at Zishu and another one at Jiacha, which are 25 kilometers of each other. They'll build 3 dams. And there's only 550 kilometers from the Indian border. But if these were the only dams that were being built, it would be, I suppose, not make much of a difference. But there are reports that Chinese are building 20 to 52 dams.
52 dams?
52 dams.
Only on the Brahmaputra?
Only on the Brahmaputra and its tributaries. And they say all of them will be run of the river. There was also a proposal to build a huge dam at the Great Bend. The Brahmaputra flows through Tibet and then bends from east to south to enter Arunachal Pradesh. There's no confirmation whether that big dam, that super dam, is being built at the Great Bend. But water experts say that most of the water that is in the Brahmaputra in India, the Brahmaputra becomes Brahmaputra only after it enters Assam. Before that, it is the Dibang and the Dihang and so on and so forth. So all the recharging, about 75 to 80% of recharging of the Brahmaputra happens after the Great Bend in India. But if this kind of dam building activity takes place in the Tibetan plateau, it's a matter of concern both for India and another lower riparian, that is Bangladesh.
Okay. So no blocking, even the flow won't be affected too much. And the third thing is that the project is actually an old project. It was launched in 2014. So the question then arises that China's state-run news broadcaster Xinhua, why did it release the reports of this dam again only 3 days back when it's actually an old project and it won't affect?
No, the project started in 2014. This is different from the Zangmu dam. This project started earlier, and they may have released the news for tactical reasons, because building a dam on the Tibetan plateau is a technical feat. So they might have been celebrating that. They might have been telling India that, look, be careful how you deal with Pakistan. But I think it was picked up by Indian media and made into an alarmist news item, because China also said that India's interests will not be affected. This dam will not affect the water flow in the river.
Okay. So in no way is it a response to all the hype that is being created over India reviewing the Indus Waters Treaty?
I don't think so. I don't think so, because India had not said in 2014 that we will review the Indus Water Treaty, nor had India said anything when China announced these big projects, except saying that share the data with us, tell us what is happening, what are your activities on the Brahmaputra.
What is the extent of knowledge in Indian administrative machinery over China's activities on the Brahmaputra?
Well, in the 1990s, it was virtually zero. We didn't know what China was doing on the Brahmaputra, and whenever India made any claims, China could deny them. But last 1.5 decades, because of satellite pictures that are available, we know exactly what is happening and how many dams are being built, what is the construction activity, etc. Now, the disturbing thing is that India and China do not have any agreements to even share the, information. In 2013, an MOU was signed for sharing water flow data on the Brahmaputra.
Okay.
But only on the Brahmaputra, and there also India has to pay for that data. There was data sharing agreement one-off when there was Himachal floods on the Jhelum, because the Jhelum also originates from the Tibetan plateau, but that was only for that period.
Okay. So, which means that the information is still pretty much not significant enough in India.
No, information is significant enough, but we don't have we need to monitor the flow of transboundary rivers on a regular basis. Yeah. For this, these
that
two countries that monitoring is not happening.
Because you said that the data is being shared with India, but even that is paid.
Yeah.
So that means, there's a sort of a mistrust between the two countries as far as sharing of data on the river waters is concerned.
It's because the Chinese believe that they have sovereign rights over all the rivers that flow through their territory. Now, this is a position which is contrary to international position on transboundary rivers. Okay. There is a UN convention on non-navigational uses of transboundary rivers. China has not signed it. India also hasn't signed it. Okay. But China does not recognize the rights of lower riparian states, doesn't take their concerns into account. What it says is that it is taking these concerns into account as a unilateral declaration. Okay. But there is no attempt to discuss. Now, if you look at some other rivers that China shares with other East Asian countries, Southeast Asian countries, take the Mekong. The Mekong River also originates in Tibetan Plateau and flows through, about half a dozen states. And there is a river basin authority called the Mekong River Authority, which manages the flow of the river, the dams on the river, etc. China is not a member of the Mekong Commission, nor is Myanmar. China became a dialogue partner, but if it becomes a member of the Mekong River Commission, then it goes against its position that it has sovereign rights over the Mekong as long as it's within its own territory. Similarly with the Brahmaputra, similarly with the Indus and the Jhelum, which flow into India. Now, India also has not signed the UN Convention. However, India has entered into transboundary river agreements, Indus River Treaty being one of them, the Ganga Treaty with Bangladesh, and the Tista River Water Sharing Agreement, which is being negotiated with Bangladesh. So our position is slightly different from that of China's, that we are willing to take the rights of the lower riparian countries into account and discuss with them how to share that river water.
Okay. The Mekong River Basin Authority that you talked about seems like an interesting concept. Is it a transnational body?
Absolutely, it's a transnational body. There are 5 countries which manage it. But this is not the only thing happening in sharing of rivers. I mean, there are river basin authorities in other parts of the world. They exist in Africa. They exist in other parts also.
But to come back to Brahmaputra, does the Brahmaputra also need this kind of a body?
Brahmaputra certainly will need this kind of a body. In fact, all transboundary rivers will have to follow a basin approach and have a cooperative water sharing agreement. And that is possible if you sign the International Convention on non-navigational uses of watercourses.
All right. So there you go. You have our editor Bharat Bhushan clearly saying that this is a lot of unnecessary hype that has been created around this project that the Chinese are building on this tributary of the Brahmaputra. It is not going to block this tributary permanently. There's going to be only a small pondage, and even the flow of the river into the Indian territory will not be affected much. That's all we have for you in this special edition. Do stay tuned to catch.